From last-minute lineup change announcements to different manufacturers showing strong pace, Watkins Glen has given us a lot to talk about. And with a big race still to come, it sure is shaping up to be an interesting sail in 6 hours of the Glen. Now we're going to get to the results of qualifying, but before we do that, I just want to touch on a couple of news stories that have unfolded sort of this week, and even a couple from last week at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. One of the big news stories that emerged yesterday was a driver lineup change in the 021 Triarsi Competizione Ferrari. Confirmed on the team's social media, the car will now be driven this weekend by Alessandro Balzan, Jason Hart, and AJ Muss. And they replace the outgoing trio of Sheena Monk, Stephen McAleer, and Mike Skeen, who have been competing in the GTD class in that car since the beginning of the season. It was a last-minute change, but it does look like the 021 is no longer going to be piloted by Sheena, Stephen, and Mike for the rest of the season. And I'll link both of the social media announcements, both from Sheena's Instagram as well as from the team Instagram, in the description of the video. I also want to touch on a couple of announcements from the 24 Hours of Le Mans the other week that are relevant for IMSA. First off, we got confirmation that Orica and Ligier are going to be the two chassis providers for the new LMP2 regulations that are set to debut in 2028. Also confirmed in the announcement was Gibson will be the engine provider of that car. So not a huge amount of difference here. There are only going to be the two manufacturers for this new round of LMP2 regulations compared to the four that we've previously seen. However, really hoping with the introduction of these new regulations, we're going to see more of a mix of the Oricas and the Ligiers on the grid come 2028. Also talk about this in a bit more in-depth following the Watkins Glen weekend, but Genesis also made a couple of key personnel announcements last week at Le Mans. Of course, that car isn't set to begin testing until later this summer, but it is worth mentioning. And perhaps one of the biggest announcements coming out of the 24 Hours of Le Mans was that McLaren unveiled their new LMDH. Now, the car is set for a 2027 debut only in the World Endurance Championship. However, it was noted during Le Mans week that they have not ruled out bringing the car to IMSA. We've heard this from a lot of some of the new LMDH manufacturers recently, but hopefully McLaren is going to seriously consider an IMSA program. And again, I'll also be talking about this in a bit more in-depth in a video post Watkins Glen. Now, after first practice, I was able to catch up with some of the drivers that are competing in this weekend's race, ask them what they think of the race, what to expect this weekend. Here's what they had to say.
I feel great. I feel ready, and obviously I feel sharp because we just drove a lot last 10 days.
Yep.
And jumping, yes, it's an LMP2 to a GTP Cadillac, but it's still a prototype. There's traffic, there's GTs, and I feel like ready and very motivated for this event. In general, the LMP2 is much more simple. There's less electronics, there's no hybrid, so let's say we have a little more time to rest in the LMP2 on the over 24 hours. But apart from that, from a driving point of view, maybe the LMP2 is slightly lighter and more agile, but it's just a different prototype. I love the GTP because you have power, you have the technology, we can really change everything to suit the driving style and the track conditions, which is in the end as much as a challenge as driving it. So it's different, but in the same way at the end. I would lie if I said we're happy with the start of the season. It was not easy. We've been learning a new car against teams that knows the car for 2 or 3 years at least. I think we've had pace the last two events. Maybe on the 40, clearly we didn't have the result, but we had the pace, which was very positive. And coming here, I really believe we have a good shot at it. We'll have a good car, and everyone's very motivated. So coming from a high, the momentum is there, and I'm excited for the second part of the season.
We had really good results here in P3, and then in LMP2 we finished second last year. While I was fighting for the win, I had a little contact with Nielsen. Yeah, it's a great track. To be honest, it's my favorite track in IMSA because this tarmac, and especially driving an LMP2 car, is so fast. Like, we almost don't break, from toboggan to carousel. It's like all very fast corners. So it's fun to drive here. Also fun to drive in Canada, which is next. And those are the tracks we were fastest last year. So I think we're still, missing this win in LMP2. It's been a year already, and I really want to win a race. The whole team wants and deserves. So yeah, we will keep fighting, and I think we've done a lot of work, especially in this break. We came test here in Watkins, and we were fast. Today we started the day being the fastest. It doesn't mean anything, but it's better be there than in the back. So it's the car is feeling good, and I hope we can find this first victory. Honestly, it's really nice to be leading because when I saw the championship points after Sebring, I was really impressed because we had 2 bad races. We just survived and we ended up leading the championship. But that makes us very happy because we know we need to get better. We need to improve. So I think we did. Today in the free practice, I felt really great in the car. So I imagine, if we go a little step better, we would be fighting for wins. We were not in Daytona and Sebring, but I believe we are close to that. And then if we improve this a little, we will be fighting. And it's very tough competition in LMP2. There's so many good drivers and good teams. So also very hard to do that, but I believe we can do it. So I mean, thanks God I keep driving because I do other series. I was racing in Brazil, so I had like 4 races in this break. So it was just a break from IMSA, not break in racing. But also good for the teams to have a little break because those guys, they never have Christmas. Like they are always working for Daytona, so the break they have is very low on the end of the year. So they could rest a bit maybe, but also I'm sure they were, unmounting the whole car and mounting again, which is a lot of work and takes months. So yeah, it's good for the teams to relax a bit and then go back to racing. But I missed a lot driving the LMP2 because they are more fun than the stock car I do in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we had so far already a really good season. We collected good points so far, that's why we are leading the championship. And of course, our aim is to keep on going like this, try to get the maximum points we can get during a weekend. For sure will not always be the case that you can fight for a victory, which we have seen in Detroit, but in the end we made some points which were important. And it's important to just be clean, stay out of troubles, and get good points for the championship. Yeah, it's very challenging, and also during a race, there's situations where other classes also fighting for positions, and if then you meet them on track in the wrong place, it's easy that something happens. But this is for everybody the same. This is also what we love about sports car racing and about multi-class racing, and we try to do the best out of this.
Yeah, it's never easy to do that, but honestly, I would say from the driver's side of things, we probably have the easiest task on that front. It's definitely a much harder job for the crew. I at least got 3 hours sleep during the 24-hour; they got none. And then they have to get here and finalise car prep and get here on the Tuesday and work through things. So I feel pretty lucky. Obviously, Le Mans is always an intense race, 3 drivers, 24 hours. It's a major part of the challenge. That is the greatest race in the world. So definitely just had to catch up on a bit of sleep and just relax as much as I possibly could. But yeah, I feel ready to go. The team, I think, have done a really good job in transitioning between Le Mans and here. So we feel as ready as we would normally do for the Sail 6000 at Glen. I mean, we felt like we've had good momentum the whole time, to be honest. Just a couple of races haven't gone our way with, getting tangled up with competitors or whatever. But I've genuinely felt like every time I've jumped in the AWA Corvette, I've had a car that could podium, could win. That's all I can really ask for. If you've got the pace, then IMSA's are complicated races. There's some seriously high competition, so you never quite know how a race is going to go. But as long as I jump in that car and feel like I could be the fastest guy out there, and if I can get to the front, I can hold it up there, then I'm a happy driver, and I've been a happy driver in every race. So we just need to keep that momentum going and just see if we can, cycle our way to the front a little bit more and try and keep out a little bit of the trouble that we found ourselves in a couple of races. So been really happy with the team, really happy with the car. I'm loving driving the Corvette. And just need to keep that going. This is a race that we highlighted early in the season where we feel like we could be strong, so we've got to go out and execute and put the theory into practice.
Sure, yeah, it's huge, and as you said, our car loves this track. Always been good for all BMWs, GT4 up through GT3. We've had success here in the past with wins and podiums, so it feels a little bit like home coming back. We're definitely missing a little bit of pace this weekend to try to be at the front, but we're working on it. And yeah, we're definitely kind of fighting the same cars as we were last year. 57's been very, very strong, so we'll try to claw back to them a little bit. I think one thing that's interesting about this weekend is there's a ton of cars out there. There's 60 cars, which track's going to be super congested. People are going to be in a hurry. It definitely is going to create some crazy racing. Equally, you can have a bad race here because there's more cars. So the fact that there's like 24 GTDs, I think, maybe
20, I think.
20? Okay. So normally we're in the teens, so there's more cars here. A DNF is even less points than you earned before. So I think we got to be smart and have a good race, clean race, and see where we end up. But try to keep the 57 behind us if we can. Yeah. I think in this area during this time of year, the weather can almost come out of nowhere. So we have to kind of contend with that a little bit. Last year we had to kind of set the car up for both wet and dry, where here it looks like it's going to be dry, but you really never know. So this track tends to always throw something at you. It likes to start to rain in the boot and be dry everywhere else, so it's very easy to get surprised with a totally wet track. So it keeps you on your toes for sure.
All right, now let's talk about qualifying. The qualifying session that we had today was under the hottest conditions that we've had all weekend, and honestly, I mean, it didn't really impact a lot of the results that we were seeing, at least from what we saw in practice. Lots of the cars that we saw that were quick in practice carried over that speed into qualifying as well, but speaking with, lots of fans, especially from, the Porsche camp and in GTP, very quick to remember that, this is qualifying. Qualifying pace is not necessarily going to be indicative of what race pace is going to be like, but I do think qualifying showed us a lot. Starting off with GTP, it was the number 93 Meyer-Shank Racing Acura of Renger van de Zande, who put in the fastest time of a 1:35.558. He beat out the 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac, the 60 Meyer-Shank Racing Acura, the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac, and the number 40 Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac. Now, obviously, just hearing the 5 cars that I read off to you, the 5 are dominated by Acura and Cadillac, who've shown good pace all weekend throughout practice and into qualifying. I think that the BOP changes that we saw initially implemented in Detroit are starting to really show through in the results that we've seen here today. I was thinking that Detroit, not really that quick of a track, not really that many high-speed corners. Watkins Glen, where we see a lot of those changes to the BOP implemented, obviously a much higher speed track, so it makes sense that we're seeing quite a bit of separation from some of these. The closest non-Acura or Cadillac was the number 24 BMW, and they were 1.4 seconds back of the pole setting time. Now again, what does that mean for the race? Well, I think going into this, you've got to be looking at Acura and Cadillac as the early favorites for this weekend's race, but we know how the pace can change into the race. Qualifying pace, one lap pace, does not necessarily mean you're going to be quick throughout the race. And with that in mind, I mean, even though Porsche didn't have a very strong showing in qualifying, there's a reason why they're leading the championship points and have dominated the first half of the season. So you definitely can't rule them out come race day. I also want to point out an impressive qualifying run from the heart of racing and the number 23 Valkyrie here. Ross Gunn put in a time of a 1:33.360. He was 1.8 seconds off of the pole setting time, but notably they beat out one of the factory Porsches. So Aston Martin really just race after race. They're continuing to impress everyone, I think, with that Valkyrie program. Going to be interesting to see what they can do come race day. And now the sun returns that I've been hiding from for the past few minutes. But here we soldier on with the LMP2 class, and LMP2 was a bit surprising, I think we have to say. So Spike, the 99 AO Racing entry, they had an engine failure in practice. The team had about 3-4 hours to be able to get that new engine in the car, have it ready to go for qualifying, and I think everybody was a little bit surprised when we saw that car even be able to make a qualifying attempt here. So really well done by AO Racing, and it really paid off for them. PJ Hyatt set the fastest time in LMP2. That was a 1:35.878 and beat out the 11 TDS Racing entry of Stephen Thomas by a 1/10 of a second. Number 22 United Autosport, number 2 United Autosport, and number 18 Era, they rounded out the top 5. I'm telling you guys, Watkins Glen weather is wild. It is sunny now, but there are a couple of raindrops falling. And I'll talk about some of the weather in a minute, as long as, I don't get rained on here. But yeah, well done to the LMP2, to AO Racing, with their LMP2 entry. Get pole, I believe PJ also put that car on pole here last year. they're going to be really looking to carry over that momentum that they picked up last weekend at the 24 Hours of Le Mans and carry that forward into the 6 Hours of the Glen. GTD Pro, I mean, it kind of looks like a two-manufacturer race right now. The number 9 Pfaff Motorsports Lamborghini ended up picking up the pole in a 1:44.595 second time. Andrea Caldarelli, that car has been really quick all weekend long. They topped the 2 practices earlier. They do look like this could be a big breakthrough weekend for Pfaff in that respect, after picking up a podium at Detroit and then also picking up a 4th place finish at Laguna Seca. So they're starting to build some momentum with that program. Starting second is going to be the number 48 Paul Miller Racing BMW. Dan Harper put in a 1:44.737 second lap time there. Then you look down to 3rd place, and it's the number 4 Corvette, and they're 7/10 back of Pfaff's pole sitting time. So a little bit of a gap there, but I mean, I guess I should. If I mentioned it for GTP, got to mention it for GTD Pro as well. These are qualifying times and not necessarily indicative of the pace we're going to see in the race. Finally, there's GTD, and I really want to mention this here is that, you know, I noticed it when a lot of the cars were out on track, maybe some surprising starting places for some of these cars, but it's important to remember that lots of them were putting out their AM driver. It's a 6-hour race, sure, but they have 3 drivers. It's a mandatory 3-driver lineup in GTD. So they're, in lots of cases, are going to be starting their AM driver, getting that hour and a half of drive time out of the way at the beginning of the race, so then they can have the pro drivers for the end. So I think the starting position for a lot of these cars isn't necessarily indicative of the pace that we've seen out of them so far this weekend. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting teams to watch here in the GTD class. Regardless, though, it was the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin driven by Zachary Robichon that put that car on pole with a 1:44.788. They beat out the 36 DXDT Corvette, the number 32 Corthoff Mercedes, the number 57 Windward Racing Mercedes, and rounding out the top 5 was the 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and I mean, it's Watkins Glen, so one of the things that we're always going to be talking about here is track limits. Turn 1, Turn 10 are the most common spots that we're going to see warnings, you know, given to drivers, given to teams for track limit extension, and we're probably going to see some penalties handed out as well. And as we've seen develop throughout this entire week, and the temperatures just keep pushing higher and higher, it is going to be a hot one tomorrow at the Glen. And while we're expecting it to be sunny for most of, if not all of the race, there's always a chance in this region of a pop-up shower that could wreak havoc, similar to what we saw last year. It was very sudden downpour that came and overtook this race last year. So even though we're forecasted for good weather, keep an eye out for some pop-up showers. I'll be back for a full post-race report tomorrow, as long as everything goes according to plan. We don't get any crazy weather here. But in the meantime, you can check out everything you need to know for this year's Sail in 6 Hours of the Glen right here. Huge shout out to all of the channel supporters. If you too want to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/offtheS's. Click that join button below. Once again, though, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.